To finish up this week, I want to show how we could unite observations about different traits of the novel in order to build overall interpretations or arguments about persuasion. First off, I'm going to suggest that Austen's purpose is to challenge prevalent notions about marriage during her lifetime, when it was common to believe that the purpose of marriage was primarily social advancement. There was an ongoing debate about the strange idea of marrying for love in Austen's time, rather than for status. For centuries, the aristocracy had married strategically, and Austen represents this perspective in Anne Elliot's family. We see evidence in certain language. For instance, in chapter 4, Sir Walter Elliot looks back on Wentworth's initial courtship of Anne as a possible, quote, throwing away, since Wentworth at the time had nothing but himself to recommend him and no hopes of attaining influence. Think of the language, throwing away, as though Anne is a resource for family prosperity, or a means of gratifying Sir Walter's vanity. Certainly it doesn't imply that she is a person with her own agency. So the narrative indicates petty motivations, and aspects of the novel offer further evidence that Austen does not condone matchmaking that prioritizes social advancement. For one thing, we see that the households that result from these unions aren't happy ones. Charles Musgrove and Mary don't know how to raise their children, and each blames the other. Charles Musgrove can't walk with his wife without experiencing such irritation that he lashes out at the plants with his cane. Mary's undefined and persistent health problems symptomize a malaise that permeates her whole family and gives rise to bad marriages. The fruits of such unions are often rotten too. Consider how Wentworth's meteoric rise in the Navy is juxtaposed with references to the Musgroves' late son, Dick, an undistinguished sailor, considered a loss by no one. We could also say that Persuasion is a novel about social change in which Austen celebrates that the old order, the aristocracy, is being displaced by a rising middle class. There's a possibility of social mobility enabled by what the British referred to distastefully as new money. Austen explores this social change with a sustained contrast of the gentry and the navy. The upper class in this book is idle and decaying, but the middle class, represented by the navy, is industrious, hard-working. The status Sir Walter Elliot enjoys has been inherited rather than earned. It will pass on to a male heir he doesn't know very well nor like. All of this seems kind of ridiculous to us as readers, but Sir Walter clings to the system that has favoured him in life, and he insists that a person's quality is a matter of birthright and not conduct. Think, for example, of chapter 3, when Sir Walter affects not to know who Wentworth is when his lawyer mentions the name in conversation, and I'm quoting Sir Walter here, "You misled me by the term gentleman." His opinion on naval service is that it ruins the complexion. Similarly, his relatives waste their lives. We're told that Charles Musgrove, quote, did nothing with much zeal but sport, and his time was otherwise trifled away. So Austen sets up a contrast between those who have inherited wealth and those who have earned it. Over dinner at the Musgroves, Wentworth accounts of his rise from obscurity. We're invited to juxtapose the characters, to compare them, always to the disadvantage of the gentry. Sir Walter has to leave his house because he squandered his fortune. On the other hand, it is clear that Admiral Croft will run a much more efficient household. We are told that moving into Kellynch, quote, the Crofts took possession with true naval alertness. So we can argue with reference to evidence that Persuasion is a novel about attitudes to marriage that prevailed in Austen's lifetime. And we could likewise argue that it is a novel celebrating the rise of the middle class, aided no doubt by the fact that Austen is of this class and that she had several relatives in the Navy. Likewise, there are many other kinds of arguments we could construct about Persuasion, saying that it has particular preoccupations, particular messages it wants to deliver, always making these arguments by drawing together observations about different aspects of the novel.